My guest is an expert in constitutional law, crime and justice with the Heritage Foundation. We've had him on numerous times before, and again, glad to welcome John Malcolm on board. Welcome, John.
Great to be with you, Larry.
Let me pick up right away with the president, of course, announcing yesterday Operation Legend. And, folks, I've not had time to describe and tell you that the Operation Legend, the Legend name, is named after a 4-year-old boy killed in Kansas City. You'll hear from his mother later before we wrap the hour. But the president announcing deploying 100 federal agents to Chicago. Attorney General Barr stressing these are federal agents going to task forces, working shoulder to shoulder with state, local colleagues. They're tactical teams, not similar to the ones used to defend riots and mob violence, but they can do that as well. John, to begin with, what is your take on him sending federal agents into Chicago?
Well, the situation in Chicago is out of hand at the moment. I mean, the crime rate has been staggeringly and persistently high in Chicago for years. But now, particularly when regular police officers are diverted out of neighborhoods with high crime areas and are now trying to address protesters, some peaceful, some not peaceful, in downtown Chicago, the streets are unguarded. I mean, there were 10 people shot and 3 people killed yesterday. On Tuesday, 23 people were shot, 15 outside a funeral home, and 4 died. The situation is desperate. Federal authorities have their federal anti-gang and anti-gun laws and anti-drug laws, and they have all of the authority that they need to go in and enforce these laws, and that's what they claim they are doing, and I have no reason to doubt that.
Chicago Mayor,
go ahead.
Chicago Mayor Lightfoot says we don't want them. We don't need them. We don't want them.
Well, that's insane politically, but it's also, she may not want them, but in this case, these federal authorities are not coming in to take over a job from local officials. They are not enforcing state criminal laws. They are enforcing federal criminal laws, and they have every right to do that. In fact, in Kansas City, they were having big spikes in crime, and I think it was the mayor there, perhaps it was the governor, welcomed federal authorities in to enforce federal anti-gun laws, and crime has started to decline as a result of that cooperation. I would think that with the situation going on now in Chicago, with neighborhoods being beset by drive-by shootings, that they would welcome that cooperation.
All right, let me clarify something very quickly. So a drive-by shooting, federal agents being sent in, that they're going to deal with that kind of crime on the street? Now, you told me they're not going to try to enforce state or city laws. They're looking at federal laws. I mean, a drive-by shooting obviously is a crime, but how do you make a federal case out of it?
Yeah, there's a lot of concurrent jurisdiction when it comes to gun crimes and drug crimes. So you're right that these are also state crimes. But if the gun traveled in interstate commerce, or if this is part of a gang activity, if this is a felon in possession of a gun, if it's somebody who acquired the gun illegally, there are all kinds of federal firearms laws that are likely being violated by the people who are engaging in drive-by shootings. My guess is that most of these people have criminal records, and they did not legally obtain their firearms. Contrasting
your view is Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano, who says consent, he said, is essence. If the mayor is not consenting and doesn't want the federal agents to be sent in, federal assets, he said, at all on the streets for law enforcement, they may have a constitutional issue.
Well, with all due respect to Judge Napolitano, again, if the agents are being called in to enforce state laws, he's right. But they have absolute authority to go into those territories, whether they get consent or not, to enforce federal laws, which is what it is they're doing. And, by the way, if there was a complete breakdown of state authority and state authorities could not enforce state laws, the president could probably send in federal law enforcement officers to do that, too. But we haven't reached that situation, and hopefully we won't.
Now, this differs from what's happening in Portland because we have federal agents guarding a federal facility there. They're not going through the streets other than protecting that facility and maybe going out and picking up some they see taking part in some of the violence and arresting them away from the protest. There's no there's a difference there, and yet there's not, right?
Well, it's the same situation. Federal authorities can enforce federal laws. And there are federal laws preventing the destruction or damage of federal facilities, and that's what they're doing. They're guarding federal property. They're guarding monuments on federal lands. They are protecting against federal officers who are being attacked.
And federal agents, because
yes.
I saw that lasers may have blinded 4 of those officers trying to protect that courthouse.
Oh, and they've been had stuff thrown at them, sharp objects, and people are breaking down the windows. So already one window broken down around the federal building. Absolutely, the federal authorities have every right. In fact, they have a duty to be there. Whether or not the mayor of Portland wants them there is totally beside the question.
All right, you're listening to John Malcolm, the Heritage Foundation expert in constitutional law. John, I'm going to express some views shared by a friend of mine with me. And I'm going to take his position. So here I come. First of all, before I get to that, you do know, and I'm sure you've heard, that Illinois Congressman Bobby Rush among them, and also Joe Biden already saying, this is just going to create a race war, and they think that's what Trump wants to do, is initiate a race war before the election.
Wow. I don't know whether federal authorities being there will inflame the situation or calm the situation down. I do know that if the federal authorities abandon that courthouse in Portland, it's going to be torched.
So what? So what? Why don't we just walk away and let them have it? And then and then what about the other federal building down the street? They'll probably want that one next.
Right. Look, you don't keep feeding the alligator in the hopes that the alligator gets full before it eats you. I mean, if you just allow this kind of activity to continue, people will say, well, all right, that didn't get their attention. Now I'll do this.
All right, let me give you the viewpoints of this friend in the argument. I gather incensed, upset, obviously sending these federal. He said you said Chicago is just, you're just asking, it's going to create more violence. It's going to create more violence by these federal agents going in. It's not going to be helping the situation. Well,
look, that is, I suppose, a possibility. This may end up throwing gasoline.
So maybe we shouldn't do it. So maybe we shouldn't do it.
Well, I think that it is more likely that what will happen is what happened in Kansas City, which is they will make some key arrests, they will restore some calm, and the situation will improve. But look, this is a tinderbox. We are facing very dangerous and uncertain times, and I suppose anything can happen. Let's hope that these federal authorities are able to bring down the violence level being experienced in Chicago, because at the moment the place is being littered with dead bodies.
But you already have the mayor and other congressional delegates, Democrats, all the Democrats in there saying if you send them in, you're going to create more trouble. So that's almost throwing. Let me put it this way: opening up a fuel can, setting it near the fire, knowing that it's going to catch fire, and so they can say, "We told you so. Look what you did."
Well, I think that the alternative, which is to do nothing but let the status quo either continue or escalate, is completely unacceptable. Let's hope that the president's and attorney general's bars limited intervention helps quell violence and not exacerbate it.
But once you cross the line and once you send them in, there is no stop at that point. I mean, you can cease, I guess, and then pull them out, but you've already, and I hate to use the term literally, but fired the shot that's going to cause more action.
The president has an obligation to take care that the laws are faithfully executed, and that includes federal firearms and anti-drug and anti-gang laws. And federal authorities cannot afford to cede the field when this kind of mayhem is taking place. Every once in a while, federal authorities go in there in a ham-handed fashion, and the situation gets exacerbated, which is why they're going to have to proceed cautiously and with care and in a coordinated fashion. I have every reason to believe that that's what they will do.
And what about those who say Trump is just trying to start a race war by doing all this?
Look, I think that kind of rhetoric is just terrible. The president's primary responsibility is to enforce federal laws and to keep us safe, both domestically and from foreign invasions and attacks. And the president is fulfilling his constitutional obligations. And if people want to try to score political points one way or the other, I suppose nothing's going to stop him from doing that. But I'm not focused on that.